BMW's 6 Series Gran Turismo brings SUV, large estate and luxury saloon qualities to a package that offers executives something very different. There's nothing quite like it.
If you want a large, luxurious, versatile BMW, you have lots of options. Saloons, estates, SUVs. What though if you want a model combining the best bits of all these kinds of car? Well, this is the product the Bavarian brand will direct you to, the 6 Series GT. The GT tag stands for Gran Turismo, a fastback style of design that's become quite popular in luxury circles since being revived for the modern era. The idea here is to offer executive buyers something more visually appealing and aspirational than a conventional saloon, as Mercedes did when they kick-started this century's interpretation of that concept with their first generation CLS 4-door model back in 2005. This BMW's predecessor, the 5 Series GT, launched in 2009, was the first 5-door contender in this newly fashionable niche, predating more familiar products of this sort like Porsche's Panamera and Audi's A7 Sportback. That early-to-market approach should have given the Bavarian maker an advantage over rivals of that sort, but the 5 Series GT was awkwardly styled, heavy and uninspiring to drive. As a result, it failed to hit its sales targets in most of BMW's international markets, and it probably wouldn't have been replaced had it not been for the enthusiastic reception that the Chinese give to almost everything the company makes. Thanks to the folk in Beijing and Shanghai, though, we're being given a chance to see what BMW's designers can achieve second time around with this concept. The change from 5 Series to 6 Series badging reflects the company's latest naming logic that sees sportier coupe-like models featuring even number designations. As you can already see, the car in question is a big step forward from its predecessor. It's lower, it's longer, roomier, it's better looking and it's more lavishly appointed. Despite the more generous dimensions, we're also promised a much better driving experience than before too. That's thanks to an average weight reduction of around 100 kilos across the range and more dynamic underpinnings that use a mix of much more sophisticated hardware from the company's latest 5 and 7 Series models. There's also some quite astonishing technology, including another step towards semi-autonomous driving and state-of-the-art levels of media connectivity too. It all sounds quite promising, doesn't it? Time to put this car to the test. So what's BMW's idea of Gran Turismo motoring? Well, this is a big car, there's no doubt about that. That's something that's certainly obvious when you're in town or when manoeuvring. You feel more at one with it though than was the case with the previous 5 Series GT. That's despite the fact that overall length has now risen to well over 5 meters. It feels less cumbersome through the corners too than that older model. Losing 115 kilos in weight will do that for you. BMW tells us that under the skin, this 6 Series GT uses a mixture of parts from the 5 and 7 Series models that it sits alongside in the showroom. The majority of these are from the 5, the standard air-sprung rear suspension, for example, from the 5 Series Touring, but it's the heftier 7 that, perhaps predictably, this GT more closely resembles in terms of its road-going demeanour. Development Chief Klaus Otto Griebel was clearly briefed with improving the rather ungainly driving dynamics of the previous model, but his team were ultimately restricted in what they could do by the relatively high set stance and around 1.8 tons of curb weight. Now, the engineers say that the quite pronounced lean that you get through the corners is no greater than you get in a 5 Series Touring estate, but they admit that the 6 centimetre higher seating position amplifies that effect. Now we'll get to your options for improving things in that regard in a minute, but before we do, you're probably going to want to know about the various twin-power turbo engines on offer. All of them are paired with the brand's usual ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox. Most will want the 3-litre 6-cylinder inline diesel featured in the 265 bhp 630D variant we're trying here, offered mated to either rear-wheel drive or, as here, with BMW's xDrive 4-wheel drive system, a setup that at the launch of this model's predecessor, the brand said it had no plans to ever offer in its largest Gran Turismo model. Now, four-wheel drive is very much an integral part of the range. Indeed, you have to have it if you opt for the directly alternative six-cylinder petrol derivative, the 340 bhp 640i. Performance figures for these two variants are very similar, with 62 miles an hour dispatched in around 6 seconds if you're quick with the steering wheel mounted paddle shifters, and top speed is restricted to 155 miles an hour. There are some rear-driven four-cylinder options too. You can talk to your dealer about a 2-litre 620D diesel derivative, and from launch the brand's 258 bhp 2-litre petrol unit also made an appearance in a 630i version, capable of 62 miles an hour from rest in 6.3 seconds and also restricted at 155 miles an hour. Now, that same engine also features an interesting plug-in hybrid variant that you can ask your dealer about, the 640e, where it's mated to a 95 bhp electric motor and a 9.2 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, and can, when fully charged, offer an all-electric driving range of just under 30 miles. Enough on engines. What about suspension? Now, I mentioned earlier that the rear springs here are air sprung, and that's as far as you can go in a 5 Series range, and something that puts that car at a disadvantage against its arch rival, the Mercedes E-Class, which can be ordered with a fully air suspended setup. The BMW thought that the 6 Series Gran Turismo should have that too, so it offers buyers the extra cost option of something called adaptive 2-axle air suspension. That sounds complicated. It works simply. With this package, the front end gets air springing too, and the whole system works via dynamic damper control, which means that it can adjust itself via the various settings of the standard drive performance control driving mode system that all BMWs get. As usual with drive performance control, you can tweak the steering, the throttle response, the gear change timings and the stability control thresholds to suit the way that you want to drive via self-explanatory comfort, sport and eco pro modes. However, if you've got the full air suspension 2-axle option fitted, you also get a couple of extra settings, Super Smooth Comfort Plus and Adaptive, which is basically an auto option that makes all the decisions for you and even draws on the sat-nav data to anticipate upcoming hazards like sharp bends and junctions. At over 75 miles an hour, if you're in either Adaptive or Sport, the air suspension will even automatically lower itself by 10 millimeters to improve stability and aerodynamics. That's all part of technology that works so smoothly that you're never really aware that so much is going on behind the scenes to make your journey smoother and more efficient. If you want to go further with dynamic option box ticking, your dealer will offer you BMW's integral active steering system, which uses a variable steering rack ratio that works as you turn the wheel, moving the rear wheels in either of two ways, and that depends on how fast you're going. At parking speeds, the rear wheels will turn in the opposing direction to those at the front for greater manoeuvrability. If you're going much more quickly at speed through tight corners, the rear wheels will turn in the same direction as those at the front, giving you greater stability and agility. Clever, but perhaps not quite as clever as the final and priciest dynamic option that you can specify with this car, the brand's executive drive system, available only to those who have already opted for the integral active steering. This setup uses automatically adjustable anti-roll bars to give you lots of suspension movement for a great ride in a straight line, yet which spring into action through the bends to try to compensate for the body roll we mentioned earlier. All of this comes packaged up with the variable adaptive 2-axle air suspension system, leaving you with all the ingredients for a very agreeable ride and handling balance. Don't get us wrong, even with all this kit fitted, you don't get the ultimate driving machine that the BMW ads promise. Rival Audi A7 Sportback and Mercedes CLS competitors are without doubt more dynamically adept. We think it unlikely, though, that many potential buyers will care very much about that. For them, it'll be more important that a 6 Series GT can feel more luxurious than cars of that sort. That's not only because it's bigger inside, but also because it's slightly more refined, especially especially in the back, where it really is very quiet indeed. In fact, the whole experience is extremely 7 Series-like. Fitting in with that remit is the potential for semi-autonomous driving capability if you then further add in the many and varied electronic camera-driven features that come with the optional driving assistant packs. What else? Is it really worth opting for the X-Drive system if you're amongst the majority of 6 Series GT buyers who'll opt for the 630D derivative we're trying here? Well, probably yes. Come the icy winter months, you'll certainly be glad to have it. As usual, this setup works via a Haldex-style multi-plate clutch that can push up to 80% of drive to either the front or the rear wheels to suit whatever tractional needs you happen to have. Of course, it's not intended to give you any sort of off-piste capability, but it could come into its own in, say, a muddy car park if, as we'd advise, you specify the optional 2-axle air suspension system we were talking about earlier. Now, with that setup fitted, the car's ride height can be adjusted manually and ground clearance can be increased by up to 20 millimeters. That's very helpful when you're negotiating dirt tracks or steep ramps. Bear in mind, by the way, that if you don't go for the 2-axle air suspension option and you specify your car with M Sport trim, you'll be stuck with the rather over-firm passive M Sport suspension that, in our view, really doesn't suit this car, especially when larger wheels are fitted to it. We should also mention that standard steering, which as usual on large BMWs, rather masks the traction you have available when you're cornering at speed on tarmac. Mind you, though, that's also the case in what we think is probably the closest BMW badged alternative to this model, the Munich maker's X5 large SUV. For most buyers, most of the time, we think that a 6 Series GT would potentially deliver more than that model can offer, which means that if you're looking for a large executive class car and you want something particularly versatile, then just for once perhaps an SUV might not be your optimal option. If the old 5 Series Gran Turismo model had served up styling looking a little more like this, there's little doubt its sales performance would have been transformed. Now, it didn't, and in many ways it couldn't, thanks to the need for an unusually high roofline to satisfy the designer's insistence that the rear seats should be raised 30 millimeters above those at the front. All the chairs are at the same level this time around, so vehicle height is down by 21 millimeters, while the rear end has been lowered by 64 millimeters. It further helps that this 6 Series Gran Turismo is 87 millimeters longer than before, and that creates a sleeker, more rakish shape. Up front, there's now quite a bit more overtaking presence, with standard BMW Icon adaptive headlights that sit behind glass covers and feature full LED beams as standard. These lights connect seamlessly with the familiar BMW kidney grille, the width of which is replicated further down by a lower air intake that's flanked by prominent scooped side vents. It's in profile, though, that you get a better feel for what the designers have been able to achieve in reinterpreting the Gran Turismo theme for a new era large BMW. The A-pillars are now much more heavily raked, while the flowing roofline delivers a low slung silhouette with more of the kind of coupe style look that cars of this kind are supposed to deliver. The sweeping side windows help here too, and they no longer feature the extra guide strip that complicated their surfacing in the previous model. This neat air breather vent behind the front wheel arch facilitates the brand's usual air curtain technology, and that releases turbulence across the wheels, and it forms the starting point for a lower styling crease that's more prominent than the subtler higher swage line that runs through the door handles. 18-inch, or as in this case 19-inch wheels fill the large arches, with bigger 20 inches available on request. And at the back, well, as we said earlier, the awkward, bulky shaping that featured on the old 5 Series GT is here replaced by a lower level tail section featuring horizontal lines, sharp edges and tapering surfaces supposed to magnify the car's width. Actually, that particular stat hasn't changed at all. Smarter LED light clusters with horizontal strips featured too, with lenses that reach deep into the sides of the car, creating a visual connection between the flanks and the rear end. Go for the M Sport trim we have fitted here, and you get a restyled bumper fitted out with a diffuser style lower section, and that is flanked by tailpipes that are either circular or quadrilateral in shape depending on the engine and the trim level selected. Of course, as usual, what is more important is the stuff you can't see. The front end is shared with the 7 Series, the middle part of the car is based on a 5 Series saloon, and the back end features the same air suspension and rear axle setup that was previously unique to the 5 Series Touring estate. Now, as with both these 5 Series models, you get some but not all of the CLAR cluster architecture underpinning technology that was pioneered by that 7 Series model. BMW has stopped short of incorporating that pricey car's expensive carbon fibre reinforced carbon core. Even without that though, this 6 Series GT still weighs in 115 kilos lighter than its 5 Series GT predecessor. That's despite the increased dimensions. Time to move inside, and even before you do, actually, signs of thoughtful futuristic design are constantly close at hand. Now, pay for this optional display key and you'll find that even this part of the car has been given a thorough makeover. It incorporates a tiny integrated touchscreen that allows you to see if you've locked the car, check how much fuel remains, and either pre-warm or pre-cool the cabin before you get in. Pay more for the remote control parking system, and via this fob you can even manoeuvre your 6 Series GT into a tight space while you're standing on the pavement. Once in the cabin, you'll find yourself sitting a little higher than you would in an equivalent 5 or 7 Series model, and that delivers at least some of the imperious feel that you get at the wheel of the company's X5 luxury SUV. Ahead of you is a dash layout that's much as it would be in a 5 Series, which means it's very sophisticated. Virtual dials cosset your eyes through this beautifully tactile 3-spoke wheel, while at the top of the centre stack lies a big 10.25-inch colour iDrive screen that welcomes you on first name terms to the 6 Series Gran Turismo driving experience. Now, those may be the first thing you notice, but shortly after, you'll be struck by the sheer quality of what's on offer here. All the materials used, even those lower down, feel great to touch, with proper leather and metal finishing that feels very special indeed. True, in a few instances there's perhaps more of a similarity to lesser BMW models than some well-heeled owners might want, but otherwise the layout's difficult to fault. The standard powered and heated leather seats do without standard lumbar support in their conventional form, but if you specify the optional comfort chairs we're trying here, you lack for nothing and you sit in great luxury. That slightly raised seating position improves all-round visibility, and on the move we've found these virtual dials to be very effective, especially like the way that dial numbers are highlighted as the needle approaches them. Now, you can't get a sat-nav map to show in the instrument binnacle as you can with rival setups of this sort, but the gauge display areas are configurable in different ways to show a variety of information, such as fuel consumption and sat-nav instructions, and the colours, the scale and theme all altered depending on the driving mode you've selected. Mind you, it won't be necessary to look at any of this very much if you've gone for the optional head-up display we've been trying here. It's 75% larger than it is on smaller BMWs, so there's space for it to be all the more informative as a result. Anything you can't learn from the readouts ahead of you will be covered off by that vast centre dash professional multimedia and navigation system iDrive display screen I mentioned earlier. Now, we like the simple, intuitive way this works. The monitor's divided into simple connected drive, media radio, navigation, my vehicle, communications and notification segments. The connected drive menu is particularly informative, delivers a range of downloadable apps and access to BMW's suite of online services. Those are designed to enhance your journey by sending you up-to-date information while you're at the wheel. Everything from weather and latest news to a rainfall radar and an online search system. The setup now has more advanced voice control algorithms, so instead of having to give commands like navigation, enter destination and London, you can now just say something like take me to Trafalgar Square. Options include a concierge service and an online entertainment package which will give you direct access to millions of music tracks. It's also possible to connect in Microsoft Exchange 365 to your car so you can control your inbox and sync your calendar. As usual, you can operate the whole thing either by voice or by twisting the usual iDrive controller by the gear stick. What will be different for you though, if you're graduating up to this model from its predecessor, is the addition this time around of two further operational options. Adding in a touchscreen interface to this central iDrive screen is probably something that BMW should have done on its luxury models long before it actually did. The display now responds to smartphone style pinches and swipes. Gesture control, though, is something that'll be genuinely new for most buyers in this segment. This optional system recognises up to 6 gestures via a 3D sensor at the base of the control display. So a twirl of your outstretched finger will vary the volume control, while a jab towards the screen will allow you to answer a call. Now, the idea is that these kinds of gestures can be performed without taking your eyes off the road. In practice, we found the sensor's responses to be frustratingly patchy unless exactly the right kind of motion is performed. And that often leaves you in a situation where you're doing nothing more than making what appear to be obscene gestures at other road users. Cabin practicality, that's another area where a little more development might not go amiss. The glove box is small, there's nowhere to put your sunglasses, and this leather-topped twin-lidded storage box between the seats is nothing like as deep as you expect it's going to be, and incorporates 12-volt and USB ports. We do, though, like this covered cubby ahead of the gear stick, which features a beautifully damped sliding top and glides back to reveal twin cup holders and a compartment for your phone that can incorporate an optional wireless charging mat that also charges the display key. The door pockets are big too. They incorporate separate bottle holders, plus there's a useful fold-out compartment down by the driver's knee. Another nice touch is a standard ambient lighting system which can bathe the cabin in shades of green, yellow, orange, blue, lilac or white. Time to take a seat in the rear. As at the front, the doors are frameless and they open to reveal a wide, tall aperture that doesn't require you to duck your head on entry, as is the case with quite a few other Gran Turismo style models. Once inside, it really is very spacious indeed, with far more room than you get in a 5 Series or in a directly comparable Mercedes CLS or Audi A7 Sportback rival. In a way, though, that's what you expect. After all, this car is now over 5 meters long, and it has exactly the same wheelbase length as a boardroom segment, a BMW 7 Series model from the next class up. It will be just as refined as that full luxury sector Contender 2, thanks to more rear soundproofing than you'll find in a 5 Series. Plus, there are lots of really high-end premium touches with bespoke ventilation controls and stitched leather and GT branding on the doors that, as at the front, feature extra large bins. The area feels welcome too, helped by these extra rear quarter lights and embellished in this case by the optional panoramic glass roof. As we mentioned at the beginning, a major design change made over this car's predecessor lies in the fact that this rear bench no longer sits higher than the front seats. Fortunately, the view forward is still pretty good and headroom is much improved over the old 5 Series GT. Unfortunately, that old car's rather over-prominent centre transmission tunnel has been carried forward, limiting this rear compartment's capacity to comfortably take 3 adults. If there are only 2 of you though, this centre armrest drops down to provide a lidded storage area and a couple of pop-out cup holders. Here, as you can see, we've got the optional rear seat comfort package, which sees these quilted leather chairs able to recline electrically by up to 6 degrees. Plus, you get these 2 10.2-inch screens that work with a DVD Blu-ray player and wireless headphones. Finally, let's take a look in the boot. Tick the right option box for the standard powered aluminium tailgate, and it's one of those that can be activated with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper if you find yourself approaching the car laden down with baggage. And once it rises, well, if you happen to be familiar with the old 5 Series GT, you'll be expecting a bit more this time around. That previous model had nothing like the boot capacity its large dimensions should have enabled it to offer. Fortunately, things are much better in this replacement design. Standard trunk space has now increased by 110 litres to 610. BMW says you can get 4 full-size golf bags in here without having to flatten any seats, and we can believe that. Better still, it's now easier to get bulky items in thanks to a boot sill that's been lowered by 5 centimetres. A couple of bag hooks and a 12-volt socket are also provided. One change over the old 5 Series GT model that we're less enthusiastic about is the deletion of that old model's clever novelty tailgate, which would open either in conventional hatch form or effectively like a boot lid that protected rear seat occupants from wind intrusion. BMW says that buyers didn't especially value that feature and that it added a lot of weight, although much of that extra bulk's been added back into this 6 Series model thanks to the addition of an active rear spoiler. Still, clever design isn't entirely absent back here. The boot floor rises classily on gas struts and it can accommodate the rigidly structured two-piece luggage compartment cover. Plus there's a useful compartmentalised lower storage area, though only because the Munich maker declines to offer buyers any kind of spare wheel. If you need more room, then your first option is to take advantage of the standard 40-20-40 through-loading split fold for the rear bench that enables longer items like skis to be pushed forward between a couple of rear-seated occupants. If you need more space than that, then you'll need to activate these seat retraction switches on either side of the load area. Do that and as much as 1,800 litres of space can be freed up. That's even more than you'd find in a BMW 5 Series Touring Estate. Plus, this model can also take quite heavy loads of up to 730 kilos, and that's thanks to the air suspension system that's provided on the rear axle. On to pricing. From launch, the 6 Series Gran Turismo range was based around 630i and 640i petrol models, plus the 630d diesel we've got here, which is the version the majority of likely buyers are probably going to choose. Prices for these variants range in the £48,000 to £58,000 bracket, and all derivatives are available with either base SE trim or in this M Sport guise. Now you can also talk to your dealer about an entry-level 4-cylinder 620d diesel and a plug-in hybrid version, the 640e, which combines a 2-litre petrol engine with an electric motor. Stick to the mainstream models and you might well want your car fitted with BMW's xDrive 4-wheel drive system. Now you can't have that on a 630i, but it's standard on the 640i and it's a £2,000 option on this 630d diesel variant. Now, before we get into how this kind of value proposition compares against rivals from other brands, we need to give you an idea of how 6 Series GT pricing positions this car against other similarly engineered models in the Bavarian maker's range. And the answer is that this model has been pitched directly between the two most comparable products that you'll find in one of the company's showrooms. So an equivalent BMW X5 SUV would cost you around £3,000 more. A comparable 5 Series Touring Estate would cost you about £3,000 less. As for rivals, well, it's quite possible that potential customers for this car could be coming from all kinds of executive class large SUVs and saloons. But in terms of really direct rivals that also follow the Gran Turismo concept, there are really only two, the Audi A7 Sportback and the Mercedes CLS, and they're both priced against upper-end 6 Series GT models. As for other, less comparable options, well, if you don't care about badge equity and you want to save a bit, then the top V6 GTS version of Kia's Stinger delivers the GT concept for about £40,000, as does a top Volkswagen Arteon. At the other extreme, if you've a little more to spend than BMW's asking here, Porsche's Panamera provides a really luxurious take on Gran Turismo-style motoring from just over £66,000. Other slightly more conventional sporting executive saloons that potential buyers might be looking at for BMW 6 Series GT money include Maserati's Ghibli and the 3-litre versions of the Jaguar XF. If, having considered all of that, you conclude it is a 6 Series Gran Turismo that you really want, then you'll be wanting to know exactly how generous BMW has been when it comes to standard equipment. Well, let's take a look at that now. Standard features that would cost you more on an equivalent 5 Series saloon or touring model include adaptive icon LED headlights, a reverse assist camera and power adjustable seats, a collection of features worth about £2,000. Other standard 6 Series Series Gran Turismo inclusions with base SE spec, run to Dakota leather upholstery, an active rear spoiler and digital cockpit virtual instrument dials. As for commoner luxury features expected as standard at this price point, well, you get 18-inch alloy wheels on SE variants, plus metallic paint, auto headlamps and wipers, LED front fog lights, front and rear park distance control sensors, LED brake lights, chrome tailpipes and a Category 1 alarm. Inside there's 2-zone automatic air conditioning, ambient lighting and front seats that are not only power adjustable but also heated, along with an auto dimming rear view mirror, cruise control, through loading 40-20-40 split for the rear bench and gear shift paddles off the smart 3-spoke sport leather steering wheel for the standard sport automatic transmission. In addition, as with the brand's other models, you get a drive performance control system which will allow you to tweak the steering, the throttle and the gear change timings to suit the way that you want to drive, and that's via comfort, sport and eco pro settings. There are though a few missing items that really ought to be included as standard on a car of this price. Lumbar adjustment for the driver's seat, that'll cost you extra, plus surprisingly you also have to pay more for Apple CarPlay phone connectivity. You can add this in relatively cheaply though, while unusually and impressively, the Apple CarPlay connection works without any cables. That apart, media connectivity is extremely well taken care of by an impressive BMW professional multimedia system with voice control that works via a 10.25-inch colour touchscreen. Now that is your access point for a whole host of standard elements, 3D navigation, a 6-speaker DAB radio, a 20GB hard disk drive, Bluetooth hands-free connectivity and access to the full suite of BMW connected drive services, including teleservices and real-time traffic information. Plus the brand's suite of online services too, which gives you access to things like news reports, weather forecast and a whole range of BMW apps. In addition, the system will read out text messages to you, and also available with every 6 Series GT model is a downloadable BMW connected app which auto-learns frequent journeys and which will list them when you're most likely to drive them. The other standard trim option for buyers is the one around half them choose, the M Sport spec that we're trying here, and that's offered at a premium of just under £4,000 over an SE model. At this level you get a more dynamic look, courtesy of M aerodynamic body styling, high gloss shadow line exterior trim, LED fog lights and desirable M double spoke bicolour alloy wheels that are 19 inches in size, which come shod with run flat tyres and feature an upgraded M Sport braking system. Inside there's sport seats with exclusive stitching and piping, plus M-specific trim for the steering wheel, the pedals, the floor mats, the door sill finishes and the front side panels, plus anthracite headlining around a panoramic glass roof. All M Sport models have firmer suspension that sits the car 10mm lower to the ground, but on request that can be deleted at no extra cost in favour of the SE variant's softer setup. If you can find an extra £2,000, a further M Sport Plus package adds larger 20-inch wheels, an upgraded Harman Kardon stereo system and sun protection glass. On to options. With the previous version of this design, you had to add in all kinds of pricey elements of dynamic technology if you were going to make it a really enjoyable driving machine. This time around, the only one of these we think you really have to have is the adaptive 2-axle air suspension system, which adds front air suspension to the standard rear air suspended setup and adjusts ride quality based on the selected settings from the DPC drive performance control system I mentioned earlier. Now, on that subject, selecting this option gives you 2 additional DPC mode options. There's an even more luxurious Comfort Plus setting and an extra adaptive mode, which will always automatically select the best possible setup for you. Now, without this 2-axle air-sprung package added in, the ride can sometimes be a little over firm. That's especially with the larger wheel sizes or with the stiffened suspension used on the M Sport models. If you want to go further, your dealer will introduce you to the integral active steering option that offers variable ratio power steering and rear axle steering for a tighter turning circle and greater cornering stability. The ultimate dynamic option, though, is the executive drive system that includes both adaptive two-axle air suspension and integral active steering, and adds to these systems a dynamic drive active roll stabilization package, which uses active front and rear anti-roll bars to reduce body roll. And once you've got all the driving stuff right on your 6 Series GT, you can start to consider some less crucial niceties. Now, we think you've really got to have this achingly cool display key with its built-in colour screen. Now, this allows remote control of the ventilation system. So, for example, you can warm the car up or cool it down while you're having breakfast, and you'll be able to check whether you've closed the doors, when a service is due, and how much fuel you've got. Now, you will need to specify a display key if you're going to take up the remote control parking option that BMW offers, of being able to remotely direct this car into a parking space while you stand by and watch. Just imagine doing that in the office car park. Another optional extra we'd find hard to resist is the gesture control feature that allows you to activate many cabin features with a mere waft of your hand. And it'd be very nice to have the now much improved head-up display, which is far more informative than rival systems. Now, all three of these features are available as individual extras, or they are included as part of the technology pack that we've been trying here. And that also helps you to create in your 6 Series GT a real office on the move, courtesy of two further features: a Wi-Fi hotspot addition to the infotainment system, which offers a high-speed LTE internet connection for up to 10 devices, and enhanced Bluetooth with wireless charging. That's a feature which recharges your smartphone when you place it in the tray ahead of the gear lever. You could also specify a premium package which offers 4-zone air conditioning, massaging comfort spec front seats, soft closed doors, a polished ceramic finish for the controls, and an ambient air system that adds a fragrance to the ventilation. Now, all these features can be ordered separately if you wish. In addition, this particular car has comfort access keyless entry, which allows you to activate the powered tailgate with a wave of your foot underneath the bumper. Plus, this test model also features the rear seat comfort package, and that gives you heating and powered backrest adjustment for the rear seats, and that's along with rear sun blinds, 12-volt sockets, and a rear seat entertainment system. Now, that incorporates a TV function, and it works via a couple of 10.2-inch screens. That works with a DVD Blu-ray player and provides connections for MP3 players, USB devices, games consoles, and wireless headphones. Now, you may also want to upgrade the standard front seat audio setup too, perhaps with the Harman Kardon loudspeaker system we mentioned earlier. That's something that can be ordered as a standalone option. If, on the other hand, you want the ultimate listening experience, well, nothing but the top Bowers & Wilkins Diamond surround sound system will do. Now, this has quantum logic surround technology with 5 sound settings, a 10-channel amplifier, a 1400 watt output, and 16 speakers. And that TV function can be added as a further option if you wish. Beyond audio and entertainment upgrades, there are various extra media connectivity options you can add too. Remote services allow you to control many aspects of your car's operation via your smartphone. You might also want a 3-year subscription to BMW's concierge service. Now that, at a press of a button, will give you direct access to an operator who will be able to answer almost any question about your journey as you drive. Now, to be honest, we could do without that, but we would be very tempted by the optional online entertainment package. Now, that will give you direct access to millions of music tracks from either Deezer or Napster, and that's without the need for a mobile or an MP3 device in the car. Now, as part of this, you can access your own music via cloud-based services, so that, for example, you could create a playlist at home and then have it available to stream in your car. Business buyers, they will also want to consider optional Microsoft Office Exchange 365 connectivity that in-car will allow them to control emails in their inbox and sync their online calendar. Away from media connectivity, other individual nice-to-have items you could add include an electric panoramic glass sunroof, cooled ventilation for the front seats, headlamp washers, a through-loading ski bag and steering wheel heating. You'll also be offered 2 optional parking packages. The parking assistant option will automatically steer you into parallel and lateral parking spaces using the active park distance control sensors and the reversing assist camera. And Parking Assistant Plus adds to that with a remote 3D view surround camera system. Now, while we're on the subject of cameras, there's also a night vision with pedestrian recognition system, which will give you infrared night vision, although so good are the standard LED headlamps that we doubt you'll need that. Onto aesthetics, you can upgrade to larger 20-inch alloy wheels, and there are a couple of solid paint finishes available, Alpine White or Jet Black. If you don't like the various metallic shades on offer, we have Sophisto Grey here. You'll want to get the look of the interior right too, either with optional BMW individual piano black trim or with your selection from a range of wood finishes, all with pearl chrome highlights. As for upholstery, well, you can swap the standard Dakota hide for softer, exclusive Napa leather upholstery with contrast stitching. As for practical touches, if you're going to be carrying lots of equipment with you, you might need the optional fully electric retractable tow bar. And finally, we'd like to have the leather case that BMW can provide to protect that display key. With an SE model, you really ought to consider paying more for run-flat tyres too, given that BMW declines to offer any sort of spare wheel. Onto safety, you'll be expecting this car to be state-of-the-art in this regard, as BMW claims it is. Now, we think it's more accurate to say that it can be, as to get the choicest electronic features, you have to spend quite a lot more. Before getting to those, though, we'll start with the basic stuff. Every 6 Series GT model features tyre pressure monitoring and twin front and side airbags, plus active head restraints that prevent whiplash. In addition, you get head and curtain airbags for both front and rear seats, and of course, ISOFIX child seat fastenings. So that hopefully you'll never have to use any of this stuff, there's the usual electronic assistance for traction, stability and braking, including hill start assist, brake drying and brake fade compensation. In addition, the infotainment system's standard suite of BMW connected drive features includes BMW Emergency Call, which will alert the emergency services should you have an accident and direct them to your exact GPS location. Should you be prepared to spend more on safety kit, your dealer will offer you various options. There's an extra cost dynamic safety system, which instantly senses if an accident situation is imminent, and if so, will automatically pre-tension the seatbelts, close the windows and sunroof, and position the driver's seat in the optimum safety position. It'll also brake the car after any impact to try to ensure that you don't hit anything else. You might also want to consider the extra cost driving assistant pack that includes 6 further electronic camera-driven features. Perhaps the most important one of these is what BMW calls the approach control warning system. Now, basically, this is one of those autonomous braking systems that scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential accident hazards, either vehicles or people. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. As for the other 5 driving assistant pack features, well, there is a lane departure warning system, which helps keep you in lane on the highway, a lane change warning feature, which detects vehicles in your blind spot if you're just about to pull out to overtake, a speed limit information setup, which pictures speed signs as you pass and displays them on the dash, and a cross-traffic warning feature, which uses radar sensors to check for approaching traffic when you're backing out of a perpendicular parking space. Also very useful is the prevention of rear collision feature, which helps you to avoid rear end impacts by automatically flashing the hazard lights at vehicles which are following your 6 Series GT too closely, while at the same time preparing the car for an impact should the worst happen. If you want to go further, the pricier Driving Assistant Plus pack we've been trying here gives you all the Driving Assistant pack features plus a portfolio of 7 additional items. Let's start with the Steering and Lane Control Assistant, which doesn't just warn you if you're drifting out of your lane, but can actively do something about the problem, subtly but firmly steering you back to where you should be on the road. There's also Lane Keeping Assistant with active side collision protection. Now this feature is able to monitor the proximity of other vehicles and actively prevent collisions from the side. Plus, highway travel can be aided by active cruise control with stop and go function. 2 other Driving Assistant Plus pack features we like include the Evasion Aid, which supports the necessary evasive steering action you'll need to take if an obstacle suddenly appears in your path, and Crossing Traffic Warning Front, a system that helps you spot traffic as you edge out of junctions. And finally, the pack includes 2 clever features that use the navigation system. Crossroad Warning flags up dangers at stop signs and crossroad locations, and Wrong Way Warning alerts you if you're going the wrong way down a one-way street. BMW has gone to great lengths to improve the efficiency of its largest Gran Turismo model, as it needed to do given the impressively high standards now being set in this segment by this car's arch rivals, the 3rd generation Mercedes CLS and the 2nd generation Audi A7 Sportback. This 6 Series model isn't quite as advanced under the skin as its larger 7 Series stablemate. That car has what BMW calls a carbon core, the term referring to its innovative carbon fibre reinforced plastic injection construction. Instead, the designers here have been content with a mix of magnesium, aluminium and high-strength steel, but that's been enough to save as much as 115 kilos over the weight of the previous generation 5 Series GT. Don't get us wrong though, this is still a pretty heavy car. Most variants weigh in at around 1.8 tonnes, which is about 85 kilos more than a comparable 5 Series Touring estate. Still, it's not enough to prevent the delivery of a set of efficiency stats that should get the approval of your accountant or your company fleet manager. 57.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 129 grams per kilometre of CO2. Those figures apply to the rear-driven 630D diesel variant that's the efficiency champion in the range, showcasing frugality and cleanliness improvements rated at around 15% this time around. To give you some perspective on that, a rival Mercedes CLS 350D can only manage 48.7 mpg and 156 grams per kilometre of CO2, so quite a difference. We have a few caveats to cover though. Go for the M Sport spec we're trying here, and thanks to the larger 19-inch wheels, the figures fall to 55.3 mpg and 135 grams per kilometre. That makes quite a difference to this variant's benefiting kind taxation band too, raising it by 2 brackets. Add in X-Drive 4-wheel drive and the best you'll manage in a 630D is 49.5 mpg and 150 grams per kilometre. Even here though, around 600 miles should be possible between fuel stops. Want a petrol-powered 6 Series GT? Then the 6-cylinder 630i is your most efficient option, managing 43.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 148 grams per kilometre of CO2. The Pokia 640i, which comes only with the X-Drive system, delivers 35.3 mpg and 183 grams per kilometre, which is about the same as you get from a rival Mercedes CLS 450. As with the diesel, the figures just quoted will fall slightly if you go for M Sport spec. BMW is very aware of the current environmental backlash against diesel engines, which is why this Munich maker's engineers have gone all out to try to make their twin power units class-leadingly clean. The 6 Series GT's 3-litre 6-cylinder inline diesel operates using BMW's Blue Performance technology, which combines close-coupled particulate filters and oxidation catalysts with an NOx storage catalyst. For exhaust gas aftertreatment, there's selective catalytic reduction technology, and that includes a water-cooled metering module for the AdBlue fluid, which serves to cut nitrogen oxide emissions still further. Now, you'll probably be familiar with AdBlue by now because most modern Euro 6 diesel power plants use it. It's a urea additive that mixes with the hot exhaust gases from the engine. As the urea combines with these fumes, it turns many of the harmful chemicals into nothing more noxious than water and nitrogen, and that's what makes up most of the Earth's atmosphere. So tell all that to the barstool experts who talk as if diesel cars are alone responsible for smogging up our cities. If you do care about satisfying these people and you want returns that are even better than is possible in any 6 Series GT diesel, then you'll need the clever 640e petrol-electric plug-in hybrid variant that you can talk to your dealer about. And now this draws on BMW's i-Performance technology and mates a 252 bhp 4-cylinder petrol engine with a 95 bhp electric motor and a 9.2 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. As a result, this package can boast the usual unlikely sounding returns applied to models with power plants of this kind, in this case over 130 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and around 50 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's based, of course, on using the full 29-mile range of the battery, which can be fully charged in as little as around 2 hours 15 minutes from a dedicated charging point. To help maximise efficiency, a provided eDrive button lets the driver of this electrified 6 Series swap between Auto eDrive, Max eDrive and Save battery modes. In the first of these settings, the car will work on electric power alone up to 50 miles an hour, but if you select Max, the car will have an all-electric top speed of 75 miles an hour. In the Save position, the system sends as much energy to the batteries as possible for future use, so you can store it up until later in your trip when you might want to drive around town with zero tailpipe emissions. Here though, our focus is on more mainstream models in the range, and across the lineup, various efficient dynamics technologies are used to keep running costs in check. There's an engine auto start-stop system, as you'd expect, but this one's a bit cleverer than the usual setup. It's able to prevent the engine being switched off at moments when it would be counterproductive for efficiency. For example, when you're pausing briefly at T-junctions and roundabouts. At highway speeds between 31 and 99 miles an hour, the cruise control can decouple the engine from the transmission to reduce friction and consequently save fuel. Of course, the driver will need to do his or her part. The figures that just quoted assume that the car is being run in the Drive Performance Control System's most frugal Eco Pro mode. Now in this setting, the air conditioning and the power steering only work when required to save energy. If you've opted for the adaptive 2-axle air suspension system, the provided extra Drive Performance Control adaptive mode links in with this BMW's professional navigation system. This then enables the car to detect braking situations in advance, such as when you're entering built-up areas, speed limit zones, corners and filter lanes, and prepare the drive system accordingly. Optimised aerodynamics obviously make a big difference too. BMW has developed what it calls air breathers and air curtains. These devices are respectively located behind and ahead of the front wheel arches. Their purpose is to reduce turbulence and therefore drag in the area around the front wheels. In addition, every 6 Series GT model has an active Airstream kidney grille at the front end with slats that stay closed when initially you first move off, and that helps the engine warm up to operating temperature as quickly as possible. Once that's achieved, the slats then open to aid cooling, but they're able to close again at higher speeds to improve this car's slippery shape. Now, if you're wondering what sort of aerodynamic benefit all these little design tweaks have, then let's tell you that the 6 Series GT model has a slippery drag figure of just 0.25 CD. You can monitor the effect that all of this is having on your car's frugality via a technology in action section of the iDrive Centre Dash infotainment screen. Here there are 2 efficient dynamic options to select, one showing real-time use of power sources and the other providing you with graphs illustrating your success or otherwise in getting close to BMW's stated figures. Now you'll have a better chance of doing that if you keep an eye on the technology in action section's other screen, and that's devoted to what it calls driving style analysis. Now this scores your driving based on anticipation and acceleration. What else might you need to know? Well, routine maintenance is dictated by condition-based servicing that monitors oil level and engine wear and takes into account how long it's been and how far the car's travelled since its previous garage visit. Now you can check all of this using menus in the iDrive Centre Dash display, and the car will give you 4 weeks notice of when a check-up's needed, so you'll have plenty of time to book that. To help plan ahead for the cost of regular work, at point of purchase you'll be offered a BMW service inclusive package that lasts for 3 years and 36,000 miles. Now with this, after a one-off payment, you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that all normal work on the car has been paid for during this period. And that includes items such as oil, spark plugs and filters. You can also insure your car through BMW, though as most 6 Series GT models will be funded with company money through a lease deal, that's likely to be bundled into that. If you are the one paying the premium though, you can expect to find insurance groupings across the mainstream range between group 41 and 44. Bear in mind that all versions of this car will be subject to the government's tax levy for models costing over £40,000, and that means road tax will stand at £450 for the first 5 years of ownership. The other big long-term cost with a car like this lies with depreciation, something that can often be easily forgotten about in the excitement of ordering a new car. With this BMW, you should be on pretty safe ground here. Industry experts CAT predict that this model will have a residual advantage over its closest rivals in the first 3 years of ownership. Now that should boil down into a retained value figure of somewhere between 43 and 47% over the standard 3-year 60,000 mile ownership period. And finally, let's tell you that this car is backed by BMW's usual 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, and that comes also with breakdown recovery for the same period. There is also a 3-year paintwork warranty and 12 years of anti-corrosion cover. This isn't a model really aimed at our market. Chinese and South Korean buyers will together account for more than half of all 6 Series Gran Turismos produced during this car's lifespan, with BMW expecting just 4% of production will make it to these shores, which does leave us wondering whether they may have underestimated the appeal of this design. After all, in many ways, it's hard to fault the thinking behind this 6 Series Gran Turismo. You'd think, after all, that there would be a significant number of luxury saloon buyers wanting SUV-style road presence, plenty of SUV owners needing something a little less in your face, and even a fairly large-sized batch of executive estate customers wanting something a little more interesting this time around. Now, all of these people had options before this car came along, of course, but these usually required compromising on the core values that each group held dear. In contrast, this BMW offers more of what people of this sort might want, with none of the concessions normally needed. Of course, there is always the danger that in trying to be too many things to too many people, you can end up pleasing nobody. But then this German brand has never been a company averse to taking a few risks. In this case, that has brought us quite a fascinating blend of upmarket class, refinement and practicality that doesn't cost much more than a comparably specified 5 Series, and which will save you plenty on a 7 Series saloon with less rear seat room and boot space. Now, unfortunately, it's not as good to drive as any of these alternatives, but if you don't really care about that and you can afford the asking prices, well, there's plenty else to like here. In summary, you could argue that rival Audi A7 Sportback and Mercedes CLS models more stylishly fulfill the Gran Turismo remit. That's probably true, but those cars are also less spacious inside and slightly more expensive. Certainly this 6 Series GT will give competitors like that far more to think about than its predecessor ever did. And if you were already looking at a BMW X5 SUV or the brand's 5 Series Touring Estate, then we think you should test this model before deciding. Like the car it replaced, it offers a different way to go, but this time around, that's a good thing. Try one, you'll see what we mean.